Let's think about this for a second. Every single business out there, right? From your neighborhood bakery to some massive auto plant, they all bleed money before they even make their very first sale. It's just a fact of life. So, in this explainer, we're going to break down the fundamental building blocks of those business expenses, drawing straight from our source material on cost and revenue analysis. Here's our roadmap for today. We're looking at the basic cost of doing business, then we'll unpack total fixed costs, total variable costs, and total cost before finally visualizing exactly how they all interact. All right, jumping into part one, the cost of doing business. This whole thing really kicks off with a highly practical question. And that question is, what does it actually cost to produce a commodity? Look, whether you're baking a single loaf of bread or rolling a million cars off an assembly line, you're facing a mountain of financial obligations. Today, we're going to categorize all those obligations into three very distinct pillars. Okay, let's move right into pillar number one, total fixed cost, or TFC. You can really think of this as the bedrock of the entire cost structure. So, what is it? Well, these are your mandatory lights-on obligations. We're talking about bills you absolutely have to pay, even if your factory produces exactly 0 units today. They are entirely independent of your output quantity. To put that into perspective in the real world, we're talking about the rent for your factory building, we're talking about interest on invested capital, property tax, insurance, and the wages for your permanent employees. These expenses, they frankly do not care if your production line is running at full speed or completely shut down. And, in business circles, you might hear these referred to under a few different names. Our source highlights a few alternative keywords you should remember. You can think of them as unavoidable costs, supplementary costs, or just simply your overhead. Moving on to part three, total variable cost. This is where we introduce the dynamic element into the mix. So, unlike that fixed bedrock we just talked about, this cost scales directly with your activity. It's incurred on variable factors, meaning it rises as you produce more volume and it shrinks as you produce less. Basically, these are your flexible inputs, things like raw materials, wages for temporary or casual workers, the fuel and power you use, and transportation expenses. Think about it. If you double your production, you're instantly going to need twice the raw materials, right? You'll need more casual labor hours, and you'll definitely see a massive spike in your electricity usage. A good mental hook here is to contrast this directly with overhead. These variable ones are known as avoidable costs, prime costs, or direct costs. Basically, if you hit the brakes and stop production entirely, these expenses drop all the way to 0. The contrast between the two is just incredibly sharp. On one side, you've got those stubborn fixed costs, like rent, that just ignore your production levels entirely. And then, on the other side, you've got variable costs, like raw materials, that are inextricably tied to every single unit you make. All right, let's jump to part four, total cost. It's time to bring our foundation and our dynamic element together. Total cost is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's the grand synthesis. It is the sum total of costs incurred on absolutely all types of inputs, both fixed and variable, in producing a given amount of output. And the beauty here really lies in the mathematical simplicity of it all. Your total cost, or TC, is quite literally just your total fixed cost plus your total variable cost. It's just simple addition. Which brings us to part 5, visualizing the costs. Because, seeing how this math builds visually really makes it click. When we look at this diagram from our source material and map these three pillars together, we put output on the x-axis and financial cost on the y-axis. It's fascinating to watch how they actually interact. Notice how TFC is just a completely horizontal, flat, straight line starting at point A. It never changes. Meanwhile, TVC starts exactly at the 0 origin, because again, 0 output means 0 materials needed. But then look at total cost, TC. It starts way up on the y-axis at TFC's origin, point A. Why? Well, because even if you produce absolutely nothing, you still have to pay the rent. But I think the most fascinating takeaway here is actually the physical space between the total cost curve and the total variable cost curve. That vertical gap, it's exactly equal to your constant TFC. It's the literal size of your fixed rent and overhead. And since your fixed costs never change, that gap just remains perfectly constant across the whole graph.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to just stop and look at a business you frequent. Maybe it's your local coffee shop or a hardware store. Ask yourself which of their costs are avoidable, like TVC, and which are completely unavoidable, like TFC. Truly recognizing that difference will completely change how you see business operations. It's a game changer. Keep analyzing, and we'll catch you in the next explainer.